Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again on Spiritually Speaking. Welcome to my beautiful channel. I am Dee May, and I have another beautiful guest with me today. This is Amber, and I'm so excited about our conversation today. Hi, Amber, and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Dee. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thanks for asking. How about you?
I'm doing so good. I had a beautiful weekend. It's so funny. Like people are always like, "What did you do this weekend?" I'm like, "I worked." But what I do is I'm a writer. I'm a copywriter, and I love what I do, and I love my
Mhm.
career, and it doesn't feel like work. And so to do it on the weekend is nothing. And I went for a pedicure, and I focused on some self-care. I cleaned my place. I did all my groceries. I did some meal prepping. I was a very good adult this weekend.
But it sounds like you have fun doing it, and that's the important thing. Like, I love when work doesn't feel like work, and that's one of the things I love about doing the podcast too, is that it doesn't feel like work. It's fun. I get to talk to beautiful people, and with writing, because I'm a writer too, so I know how enjoyable that can be. And doing the copywriting, you work for different people on different topics, so being able to explore those different things has to be a lot of fun.
It's so much fun. I'm a people person and I love people. I love collaborating with people. I love creative people especially. And I love being able to put on my creative hat. And it's to me, it's also the satisfaction that I get to see in my clients' eyes and in their websites and in their written content and their marketing and their advertising. And that's a huge part of their business, right? Like that's what people don't realize. Without writing, without words, we don't have anything. We don't have communication, we don't have speech, we don't have anything.
Right.
And it's so important in life and as a business and in business, I mean. And that's why I love what I do. Like, I was born to be a writer. I know that I was born to be a storyteller. I was put on this earth to share my words. I was put on this earth to share my wisdom. And I'm so excited to share some of that today with you and all of your lovely guests. Or, no, not guests, followers, listeners,
Listeners.
listeners.
Yeah. Yeah, and the follower list is growing daily, so that's always a fun thing too. But yes, I'm so happy to have you here and sharing too. I know we had a pre-chat the other day and your story is pretty fascinating, so I would love for you to share as much as you're comfortable sharing with us today.
Well, thank you so much. I never know where to begin when people ask me about my story because it's such a complex story. Where to begin? Do we begin in small town Saskatchewan where I was just a little girl with stars in her eyes and dreams in her heart? Or do we start it in Calgary, Alberta, where I was the white collar queen crushing the corporate world? Or do we go to Australia where I was a reality TV star and a socialite? Or do we start right here, right now, and we just talk about how I'm happy being myself? I'm sober, I'm in recovery, I'm living life, and I'm focusing on self care, focusing on my business, and I'm doing great. It's life is such, life has been a whirlwind experience, let me tell you. And something that has really grounded me throughout life and all of the twists and turns that it's brought me is my spirituality. And to me, spirituality is connecting with my higher power. And my higher power is my loved ones who have passed. I have quite a few loved ones who have passed, including my dad and my grandma and my grandpa. My best friend has passed, and my paternal grandma and grandpa as well have passed. And knowing that I'm guided and I'm protected by my angels is such a comforting and soothing feeling, and having them as my higher power that I can close my eyes and say a prayer to, and I can feel their energy and I can feel their spirit shining down on me, and being able to send and receive messages to them is such a beautiful gift. And I'm not psychic. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm not, I don't consider myself to be a psychic, and I don't market myself as a psychic. I
Right.
believe that we are all intuitive. I believe that we all have psychic abilities. And for me, I found that getting sober and also getting more into my spirituality, and the more that I connected with my higher power, the more I was able to receive, and the more that I have become clear on who I am as a person, connecting to my higher self, honoring my higher self, I have become more spiritual. I have enhanced that psychic intuition. I send and I receive more messages to my loved ones who have passed. And it's a really cool gift. I'll never forget when it first happened though. And I was like, what is this? What's happening? And I was doing this chakra meditation. I'll never forget. I was laying down on the floor. I don't even think I had a pillow. I was really getting grounded. And I was doing this chakra meditation, and all of a sudden, my left foot just started like incessantly tapping, like uncontrollably. And I was like, what? Like, what is happening? Like, I was like, am I having a seizure? Is this what's happening? And all of a sudden, I just like had this vision of my dad, and I'm half Chinese, and he was calling me by my Chinese name and saying like, come to me. And I was like, dad, like in my mind. And then when I did and I acknowledged him, that left foot was like, and it
Wow.
just stopped. And I was like, okay. And I was kind of scared by the whole scenario, and I didn't know what to expect. And I'm just trying to cleanse my chakras.
Right.
And then I'm getting this message from my dad. So I didn't actually speak to him that day. I didn't get a message. But then I was like, okay, I got to look into this. So I spoke to a couple of my friends who are into Reiki, who are intuitives. My gay husband, Harry T, he's like Australia's Tyler Henry. And I spoke to him and he's like, babe, that's like a psychic thing. Like, you're psychic.
I love that. I love you're doing it in his voice. That's so cool.
And I was like, okay, so I continued to do chakra meditations, and I was like, I'll do the same one. I'll do the same chakra
Yeah.
meditation because maybe it's only that meditation that like dad comes through. And this time I'm going to be clear and I'm going to be open to receiving what he has to offer.
Right.
And I cleared myself and I took some deep breaths and I really got myself grounded. And he came through and I was able to receive messages. And I don't know where and when it happened that connecting with him and my other loved ones who have passed became like a daily ritual for me. And I speak to them at night. It's kind of like how I say my prayer at night.
Yeah.
I have a conversation with my dad, or I have there's other loved ones who will pop in there and be like, hey, don't forget about us. Like,
Yeah.
grandma over here. My
Yeah.
grandpa
That's
will
so
send me
cool.
messages, and I get wisdom from all my spirit guides, and it's such
Yes.
a beautiful gift, and I'm so lucky to have them. And grief and losing people that you love is a really hard thing, and I think anyone who has gone through that can attest to it. And when I lost my dad, I was 10 years old. And as a little girl, I didn't understand what grief was. I didn't know what that meant. I just knew
Right.
I was really, really hurt and that I was
Right.
really, really sad and really, really struggling. And I used to ask God, who I thought was God at the time. I grew up in a very religious household where we had a very punishing God in our
Yeah,
household.
we did too.
Yeah, did you? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I
he
was
would
so afraid
send
of
you
God.
straight to hell if you weren't a good
Oh, you
girl.
were gonna burn and you were gonna perish. Don't you dare step out of line.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up with that version of God, and I used to ask God, like, why? Why did this happen to me? Why did I lose my daddy? Like, I'm just a little girl. This isn't fair. And for a long time, I didn't understand. And it was really until I grew up and I was in my 20s, really, and I realized everything happens for a reason. And I was meant to be here. I was meant to go through these things. I was meant to have a tumultuous childhood. I was meant to go through all the abuse, all of the neglect, all of the traumas, all of the pain and the suffering, because not everybody gets to have a voice.
Mm,
There's a lot of people who go through those things. There's a lot of people who suffer out there and who don't have the courage to speak up, who don't have the wherewithal to get through it. There's a lot of people out there who are that little girl praying to God, being like, please send me an angel and please someone help me. And we're so lucky that we live in this digital age now where There are things like Instagram, there are things like Facebook, like TikTok, all these things where you can curate your feed and follow spiritual pages, and you can really reach out to people for help. You can learn about mental health awareness through these channels, through, we have so much media available to us. Before, when I was growing up, it was like the newspaper and books.
Yeah.
Like
And you had to get to the
we didn't.
library to get the books.
Yes. And you better not have late charges or else you're not getting your books.
Right.
And so there's just a wealth of knowledge out there. Like for me, I focus on self-care and mental health awareness. I'm also a mental health advocate, and that's what I focus on my social media. I went through a time where when I lived in Australia and I worked in television and I was an influencer and a socialite, and my Instagram was like, buy this detox tea. This is me looking fabulous. This is me on a red carpet. And it was so inauthentic, and it was so not feeding my higher purpose and what I was supposed to be doing with my following and with my messaging. Like there's so much that I could have done being in the spotlight that I was so not in tune with, that I was struggling through my own stuff. I was in a really dark time mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that I wasn't clear enough to hone that experience and share my message like I share it now. I've done a lot of work over the last 10 years, a lot of work. I've gone through a lot of changes. I went to rehab for substance use disorder. My drug of choice was alcohol and occasionally cocaine. And I needed to get through that. I needed to get through addiction. I needed to clear myself in order to share my message and in order to be a true storyteller and really have opportunities like this where I get a platform to speak to others. And I think it's so important to connect to ourselves spiritually and to create a clearing, because once you do, you don't know what's going to come, and some really beautiful magic can unfold.
It really can. And I'm so happy for you, and congratulations on your sobriety. It takes a lot of
Thank you.
strength to do that, to acknowledge that you have an issue that needs addressing, and then to follow through with all of the things that you have to do to get yourself sober and to stay sober. So congratulations on that. That is so beautiful. I would like to go back just a little bit, and it ties into what your story that you just told, that you made a statement earlier that you're just happy being you. And I love that so much because there are so many of us on this planet that aren't happy being us. And that is a huge thing. So I'd love for you to speak into that a little bit.
It took me a long time to love myself. I was really good at pretending to love myself and saying, like, I'm amazing, I'm hot, I'm this, I'm that, I have it going on, I make good money, look at me, blah, blah, blah. At the time, I made really good money, okay? I was like, times have changed. Inflation's not a nice thing.
That's a
But
see,
I used to have a lot of bravado, and I used to be a little bit up myself, quite frankly. And it was because I was actually really insecure. I was really insecure, and I actually really didn't like myself. I didn't think I was attractive. I didn't think that I was powerful. I didn't think I was strong. I was afraid of money. I was afraid of success. I was afraid of what it meant for me. And so I put forth that really strong, confident, in your face, I got it all going on type of attitude, but it was a huge facade, and I was definitely faking it. And now, but I mean, that's your 20s. That's what people do in their 20s. It is what it is.
it's a rite of
I've
passage
had some time.
almost that we go through that.
It's totally a rite of passage that you gotta go through those like asshole times. Am I allowed to say asshole on the
Yes,
podcast?
please say
Okay.
whatever you need to say. This is a very relaxed, organic
Okay.
podcast.
Amazing, amazing. I think we all go through those asshole moments and those asshole times, and that's what your 20s are for. And I certainly took advantage of that. And now I'm in a position, I'm 36 years old, and I think in doing a lot of work on myself and really getting clear on what my purpose in life is, what I want it to be, who I want to be, like who do I want to be when I grow up? I want to be the best version of myself.
Yes.
That's what I want. And it took me a long time to realize that. I used to think I wanted to be someone or something else or someone else's dream when I grew up. I'm still growing up. We're all still growing up, right?
Right.
And for me, I'm just really happy being me because it took me a damn long time to get to the person I am today.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so beautiful. And I would love for everyone to feel like that about themselves because it is so it's a monumental thing. It is no small thing to truly love yourself and not in that egotistical kind of look at me kind of way that you mentioned earlier, but in the way that you know you're an amazing person and you know that life is such a gift and that you can share your authenticity with other people and help them to realize because when you create that space when you step into that in yourself and you can create that space for other people to feel comfortable stepping into themselves, it's so amazing. It is so amazing. It just changes everything. So you mentioned, you kind of just touched on earlier about how your spiritual journey has changed since you became sober. So I would love for you to share more about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I got sober in my official sober date is April 19th, 2020. And so I'm coming up on 4 years, which is very exciting.
Yes.
And the thing is, with it, with my addiction was like a security blanket. You know, like how kids carry around that security blanket and like they need their
Hmm.
binky everywhere they go. That was like me with my addiction. I needed that addiction everywhere that I went because I was so afraid of myself. I was afraid of my past. I was afraid of my traumas. I was afraid that I didn't know how to cope with them. And I used alcohol and drugs to cope. And yeah, that quieted down all that noise, but it quieted down all the good things too. And it quieted down my spirituality and connecting to my higher self, to my loved ones who have passed, to a power greater than myself. It disconnected me from trauma, but it disconnected me from everything. So when I made the decision to get sober, I had already been on a spiritual journey for a number of years, and I had already been into meditation, into Reiki, into plant medicine, into a lot of different things, into energy healing, that type of thing. And I found that getting sober, because I was becoming a pure and detoxified mental, physical, emotional version of myself, it allowed me to become detoxified in my spiritual relationship as well. And you know, drugs and alcohol, they're poison. The things we put into our body like that's poison for us. And I was poisoning my mind and I was poisoning my spirit and I was diminishing my light. And ironically, which sounds so silly to say out loud now, but I was afraid of my own light.
Hmm.
I was afraid because I know I got a big light. I know I was meant to shine on this world, but that is a lot of responsibility. There's a lot that goes with that. And I was really afraid of like, what does it mean if I become sober? Like, who am I going to be and what am I going to be responsible for? And what does that mean for me mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually as a sober person? Being sober was a very intimidating process and something that didn't come easy in the beginning.
Right. So, I'm sure there are other people out here who are listening to this podcast today that would love to know what kind of resources you use to get yourself to the place you are today. So, would you just share just a little bit about that real quick? We won't get bogged down in that topic, but I just want people to know where they can go if they're ready to make a change in their lives.
Absolutely. There's so many resources. It's hard. One book that really, I have two books that really changed my life. Number one was The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari by Robin Sharma. That I really enjoyed reading that one. That was a game changer for me. And then the other book was You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, or is it How to Heal Your Life by Louise Hay? I can't remember, but Louise Hay and her book is so powerful, and she talks about how the mental and the physical body are connected, and the spiritual body, for that matter, are connected, and how everything is interrelated. And that book changed my life. It was like when you have this physical ailment, like addiction, let's call it, because it is a physical ailment, it is a disease, there's something missing for you mentally and spiritually. So when you cure yourself mentally and spiritually, the physical ailment will go away. And that's what she's all about.
Yeah.
And she just blew my mind. It was so fascinating. So I highly recommend Louise Hay. In terms of addiction, it really, addiction recovery, it really depends on the person. I actually went to in-person treatment. I went to rehab. And really early on in my rehab journey, I'll never forget, I had this little mousy counselor, and I won't say her name, but she was this mousy old woman, and she was kind of rigid, and she kind of got under my skin. Like I I liked her, but I didn't like her at the same time. And I knew that she was good for me for sure. And she said to me really early on, Amber, ideally, not just for you, but for anyone, if you can spend 1 year in intensive first stage treatment, that would be ideal for you in your recovery. And I walked away from that conversation. I was like, ew, sick. A year in rehab with these people in this place? Gross. And then I was like, shake that ego off, shake it off, shake it off. And I was like, look, I've been in active addiction for 18 years. I didn't get here overnight, and it's not going to cure itself overnight. And so I told myself, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to stay in rehab for a year, inpatient, intensive, full-time treatment. I'm going to treat sobriety like my full-time job. I'm not going to work. I'm not going to study. I'm going to put my life on pause. And it was COVID, so it was convenient because the whole world was on pause.
Right.
And I told myself, I'm going to study sobriety for 1 year, and I'm going to put all of my energy, all of my everything into this for 1 year. And if I can make it through all the difficult days in a year sober once, I can do it again. But for that first year, I'm going to need as much help as I can possibly get on things like, Christmas, on New Year's, on the anniversary of my dad's death, on birthdays, on Tuesdays. Like when you're in addiction, it doesn't matter what day it is. Every
Right.
day is a good day to use when you're in addiction, so it seems. And I I did it. I did it. I did a year of intensive first stage trauma and treatment therapy, went to rehab. And if that opportunity, I understand that's a big commitment. So it, I feel like it is a good piece of advice, but at the same time, it's a huge commitment and it's not available to everyone out there.
Right.
But if you ever have the opportunity to be in treatment for a long period of time, and if you can take a time out from your life and really take time to focus and care about yourself, do it, because you deserve it and you're worth it. And that's how I got to be where I am today. I put my life on pause. My life has been on pause for 3 years. It's only in the last year that I started working again, that I started my business again. I shouldn't say that. I still had my business, but I mean like really properly working and really hustling and really making money and really putting myself out there. Like I was in recovery mode for 3 years straight, and my job was just being sober, discovering who I was as a sober person,
Mm.
and relearning how to do life. Like I had to relearn how to love myself. I had to relearn how to treat myself right. In fact, I didn't relearn it, I learned it for the first time. I had to learn how to deal with trauma properly. I had to learn how to expand my window of tolerance. I had to learn how to deal with those intrusive thoughts that pop into my mind. I had to learn so much. And there's no way I could have done that by reading a book. There's no way I could have done as much healing as I've done in the last 4 years by reading a book or listening to a podcast. So I mean, when it comes to resources, there are authors and there are podcasts, there are books and movies and stuff like that that I can recommend. But really, when it comes down to it, I went to therapy and I went to treatment every day for a year.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I want to give that advice, but I feel like it's bad advice because I know that it's not available to everyone and not everybody has the time, capacity, finances, resources, or availability to do that. But that's just what I did personally.
Yeah. Well, I think in the way that I think it is great advice, actually. I don't think it's bad advice. I think it's wonderful. Not everyone does have the resources for that, as you said, but I think the core at the core of that is that you just need to focus on yourself when you're going through something like this and make yourself the priority and give yourself the gift. And I love that we're talking about this on a spiritual podcast because there's so many people that don't realize how all of this ties together, and that to get to the place you want to be spiritually, these are the things you need to do and the steps you need to take to get to that place. It's not just like you wake up one day and you're like, oh, I would love to be more spiritual. And the next day you wake up in the morning and have your coffee and you're like suddenly enlightened. That is not how it goes. I mean, it would be so
Wouldn't that be
nice,
nice?
wouldn't it? You have that magic cup of coffee and like, bing, the light just goes on. And I
Ding!
know that
How spiritual.
yes. And I know that the stories go like that for some people. Some people do have like this really quick ascension into spirituality. And I think that's a cool thing when it happens for people. But the majority of us, it doesn't happen that way. So I love
Majority
that
of
we're
us,
talking
yeah,
about
it doesn't
this.
happen.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think for majority of us, we don't have that spiritually enlightening moment that just comes on like a light bulb that, we're born with. I think that we're all born with spirituality and a pure soul and a pure heart and an intuitive ability, but we get so cluttered and we get so bogged down with life that that slowly diminishes and it takes work and it takes effort to really reconnect to that, to your soul's purpose, to your spiritual self, to your higher self. It takes work, it takes effort, it takes clearing, it takes energy shifting. And I think there's something to be said for being responsible for your own energy. And I think you and I talked about this the other day. And I'm responsible for my energy. I'm responsible for what I put out. And I'm also responsible for what I take back. I don't surround myself with negative people and toxic people and energy vampires and people who want to talk about the news and blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
I don't.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm a happy person.
Right.
You know,
Absolutely.
I I want to give out good energy, and that's always my intention is to be the best version of myself and to put out positive energy and to put out, helpful energy. But sometimes when you have a light and it shines brightly, everyone's like, I want a piece of that. I like that. I always think of that Britney Spears song, You Want a Piece of Me. And you have to be protective of your light
Mhm.
and watch how you're giving it out and who you're giving it to and be responsible for your energy because unfortunately we live in a society that has a lot of taking and not a
Mhm.
lot of giving. And so I as myself, I have to give to myself. I'm responsible for giving back to me. I'm my number one priority and I'm in charge of myself. So I need to make sure that my cup is full, that I feel good and it's full of the right things, like,
Yes.
like meditation, like connecting to my higher self, like staying sober, having a clean place is like part of spirituality for me because I always think of that saying, messy bed, messy head. And if I have all this clutter in physical clutter, that's actually impacting my mental clutter
Yes.
and I want to be in a clear space. So it's these little things. I call them small therapies, small moments of self-care, little milestones that you can do. Like I make my bed every morning and I take pride in it because it's an act of self-care and it's like, okay, I did it. I got out of this thing today. Today
Yeah.
is a good day. I got out
Yeah.
of bed. I get a gold star because there were times there were times and there were days where I didn't get out of bed. There were
Right.
days and there were times where a lot of people don't get out of bed. That's part of mental health. That's part of addiction. That's part of a lot of different things in life. And sometimes we find ourselves in those scenarios, and it's really hard to connect to spirit when you're in those down and out times.
It is. It is. And that's a huge point, and a lot of people don't understand that, because you hear a lot of people when they're really sad and grieving or they're depressed and they're like, I just need a sign, like, why won't they talk to me? Why won't, talking about their loved ones who have crossed over. Why don't I hear them? Why don't they communicate with me? And it's not that they're not communicating. It's not that they're not giving signs, because they are. It's just that we are in such a low vibration from the sadness and the grief and the depression that we can't hear them. It's not that we don't want to. It's that we literally can't, because we're in that negative, not negative space, but that sad space. And it is looked at as negativity, because I actually read a comment. I'm in a group on Facebook called Proof of Life After Death or something like that. And this lady posted about being really, you know, her somebody had died and she was really sad, and she was asking, why she couldn't get these messages. And one lady actually commented, well, if you stop being negative, then you'll be able to see the signs. And I very rarely get involved in comments like that, but it just hit me so hard. And I did reply to that lady and I said, she's not being negative, she's sad. There's a huge difference. So when and especially, like, people love to share their opinions with us about how we should be handling our
Oh,
grief.
yeah.
It will should us to death, man. Like, it is crazy. And, like, there's no right or wrong way to do grief. We get to do that. It's a very personal journey. We get to do that. But if someone comes at you with that you're being negative because you're sad, you don't even have to say anything back to that person, but just don't take that on. Don't take that on. I invite you to just realize that it's not negativity, it's just sadness. And, we're all sad when someone dies. That's normal. That is so normal. It's not that, everyone experiences that when someone that they love dies. So, that is a message to get out there, that it's not you that's unable to get the message. It's just the fact that you're in that lower vibration because you're so sad and you're grieving. And once you come through that a little bit, those messages you're going to be able to see those and receive those messages.
That's such a good way to put it, being at a lower vibration. And you can, I know for me, I can feel myself when I'm at a lower vibration. I
Yeah.
know when I'm not connected to a high vibrating self. And I know when I'm in the wrong situations with people that are at too low of a vibration. I know that there are certain scenarios, like for instance, I don't like going to funerals. And it's not because I don't want to honor the person who has passed, or I don't love them, or I don't want to connect with them, or family and friends who are going to be there. It's because I'm very sensitive to energies, and being
Mhm.
around that sad, low vibrational energy, it really takes a toll on me mentally and emotionally, and then physically, because it's all connected. And it takes me a really long time to shake that off. And I have a habit of really like swimming in it when I hit that low vibrational energy. And I've trained myself to not do that
Right.
anymore. And I've shifted my energy. And so it's like thought stopping, that kind of low vibrational energy starts to trickle in. I'm like, nope, 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 and I kind of block it. And I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to replenish to my higher self? What
Mhm.
do I need to do to take care of myself so that I am in a strong place, so that I can be there for my loved ones who are grieving, so that I can be there for myself if I'm grieving?
Right.
How do I take
Absolutely.
care of me? I always think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I don't know if you're familiar with that. Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Mhm. Yeah.
And, if we don't take care of ourselves first, we can't take care of anyone. If we don't have our basics of food, shelter, water, air, self love, if we don't have that, we can't get to that next level of being there for others, of evolving mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. And I just, it's so important to take a step back and to be aware of our energy and when it's getting into that low vibrational, it's okay to honor it, and it's okay to say, like, hey, I'm at a low vibration. I don't feel good. I don't feel right. But remind yourself that this isn't going to stick around forever.
Right.
I recently I recently went through a really complex period of grief. I lost my grandmother, my best friend, and my grandpa all within 6 months. And it was right after my 1 year of sobriety. It was a really, really tough time. And the grief that I experienced, it consumed me. It consumed me, and I felt like I was never going to get out of it. I remember, like, it was so bad that I remember going to Shoppers Drug Mart, which is like our CVS, I suppose, and people like, "Hi, how are you today?" And I'd just be like,
Yeah.
and like burst into tears. I'm like, "Why would you ask me that?"
Yeah.
Because I couldn't handle someone saying, "How are you?" Because I'm an honest person. And how am I? I'm terrible right now. I'm
Right.
grieving. I'm grieving the shit
Yeah.
out of life. It's terrible. And I was just trying to get out of bed every day, make my bed, go out in public once and not cry and make it back home. That was my goal in a day when I was grieving. And I didn't always succeed.
Yeah.
And I was in a really low vibrational energy, but I think because I honored where I was at and I recognized and I didn't punish myself for being at a low vibrational energy, and I was really cautious about how I replenished myself. I made sure I was eating good food. I made sure I was hanging out with good people. I made sure I was getting enough sleep. I made sure I was drinking water. I was maintaining my sobriety. I was going to therapy. I was doing all the things, I was focusing on self-care. I think that I was still able to connect to spirit and still able to send and receive messages to my loved ones who have passed because I was taking care of myself spiritually. Even though I was operating at a lower vibration, I was still taking care of myself in these
Mm.
small ways and in whatever way I could possibly do. And sometimes that was literally like, I drank water today. I ate 3 meals today.
Right.
And I'm giving myself gold stars on the chart for
Yes.
all these deeds.
We need to honor ourselves for our accomplishments, even when people look at them and go, well, all you did was get out of bed. Well, fuck yeah, that's all I did. That was huge for me
Yeah.
today. I got out of
And I did a
bed. That
good
deserves a
job.
dance party. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are y'all thinking? It's we have to honor ourselves for that. And those ways that you did that, that was raising your vibration. Even though you were sad, you still were able to elevate your vibration by doing those things. So I love that you're talking about this because it ties in so much together and people don't really realize that. So I love this conversation so much. I love it. I'm so sorry for
I
your
could
losses,
talk.
but you are
Oh,
teaching
thank
people
you.
so much right now and I love that. It is so important for us to recognize these things and to the point of going out in public and not crying. I understand that as a goal, but at the same time we get to cry. Like if we're sad and we're in the store and you're like picking out a peach and that was your grandma's or grandpa's favorite fruit and you're like bawling over the peaches and that makes someone uncomfortable, guess what, y'all? That's on them. They have to
That's
deal
on
with
them.
their discomfort with your emotions. We get to be sad and it's okay. And, I used to work, be more concerned about it. Now I just carry Kleenex and like I just whip out my
Good
Kleenex.
for
And,
you.
if me crying makes you uncomfortable, well, then I don't know what to tell you. You're going to have to
That's
deal with
on
that on
you,
your own
boo. That's
because
on you.
and that's, the minding your own energy. There's a lady I just interviewed for a podcast, which will drop this Wednesday, but that's one of the things she says, mind your own energy. So I'm minding my energy. I'm sad right now, so I'm going to get out my Kleenex and I'm going to cry. And you get to mind your own energy. So if there's something about this that's bothering you,
Mind your
mind
energy.
your energy.
It's so true. And like people ask me how did you get through grief? And it was really hard because this is the first time that I grieved sober. Like I've gone through loss before, but this was the first time grieving without alcohol or drugs and without previous coping tools. And I think that's why it hit me so hard. And my answer to how I coped with grief, I just ugly cried for like a year. and I
Yeah.
cried relentlessly. It didn't matter if I was, as you said, at the store buying peaches. It didn't matter if I was at the doctor's office, if I was in a meeting, if I was with a friend, if I was by myself, if I was at home, if I was on a walk. If I had to cry, I cried. And I wasn't afraid to ugly cry. I'll never forget my. I come from three generations of crying women. We cry and we cry hard, and we're not afraid of it. And my mom has a hideous cry face, and it used to always bother me. And this one day I was crying in front of my brother, and he goes to me, "You look like mom when you cry." And I was like, how dare he speak to me like that? And I was so offended for the longest time. And then when I was grieving my grandpa and my grandma and my best friend, the way my room was set up, I had a mirror right by my bed. And I was having a moment. I was breaking down on my bed one day, and I was just heaving tears. And I caught a glimpse of my face in the mirror. I was like, oh dear God. Like, the person I saw in that mirror, I didn't recognize. Like, it was an ugly cry face. It was so terrible, but I was just letting it out. And it felt so good. It was so cathartic to ugly cry and to not care and to mind my energy and be like, yeah, I'm owning my ugly cry face and I'm gonna cry
Yeah,
because I need to, because I'm grieving, because I don't know how else to get it out.
right.
And I think it was the healthiest thing to do for me. Like, if you're sad, be sad, get it out. I think that ignoring our emotions is where the danger comes in. Like, those you see those people who are like, I'm fine, I'm happy. I'm like, but are you?
Yeah. You can see it in their soul. You can feel it from them that they're not okay. It's
No.
and it's a, you know what I mean? I just said this in an interview with another lady that we actually are okay. We're just sad. You know what I mean? Like we want to make ourselves feel like we're not okay because we feel our emotions. And 99.9% of the time, we are actually okay. We're just upset, we're sad, we're mad, we're whatever. It doesn't mean we're not okay still. And I think we get it mixed up. So we want to think that there's something wrong with us because we're feeling these emotions. And there's nothing wrong with us. It's perfectly normal and natural to feel our emotions. And like you said, don't push it down. Because I just, one of the pieces of advice I recently got, excuse me, got from my spiritual mentor was to not allow your emotions to rule you, but to
Mhm.
allow them to teach you. There's always
Mm.
a message and a lesson in what we're feeling. And if we dig into it, it'll teach us about ourselves and why we're feeling the way we are. And, I mean, sometimes it's just sadness from grief or whatever, and that's okay. But sometimes if it's a different kind of emotion like anger or frustration, we can allow, oh, I'm getting an angel download right now. We can allow it to teach us and we can learn something about ourselves that will help us to move forward in a stronger, more confident way in the future and to handle things in a different way. And we can start seeing the bigger picture when we're in these moments and know that even though we're sad, upset, frustrated, whatever in this moment, there's still all these amazing things happening, that this is just one facet of things. It's not the whole thing.
Yeah, 100%. And I always think, like, whenever something that's really helped me through depression, through anger, through frustrations is keeping a gratitude journal and having a gratitude list. And you don't have to have a journal that you sit down and you do it every morning and every evening. That works for some people, it works for me. You can have a gratitude list in your mind, in your phone. You can say it out loud on a walk. You can tell a
Yeah.
friend. You can have a buddy system where you do gratitudes every morning or every evening. And there's always something to be grateful for. No matter what I am going through in life, there's always something to be grateful for, and there's always something to be happy about. And I don't allow myself the time to dwell on the negative. I'll acknowledge the negative or the bad or the sad or the mean or the ugly or the angry, whatever. I'll acknowledge it, but I won't allow myself to dwell on it. And I think it is important that we acknowledge it like, hey, I feel angry. oh, that's what anger feels like. That's where I feel it in my body. And healing ourselves in a somatic way like that, and recognizing anger and fear and anxiety and sadness and what those emotions are, how they live in our bodies, and then being able to recognize it. Once we know how to recognize it, then we can say like, shoot, get out of here.
Mhm.
And we can choose to not make time for it, and we can invite in something else. And I just always think of like replenishing my cup, and how do I want to refill my cup for every, piece of anger or frustration or sadness. That's like a little sip of my glass of water down, and then I'm sitting there empty. Well, I can choose to fill it back up with anger, or I can choose to fill it back up with happiness and gratitude and
Yeah.
self-knowledge and spirituality and connection to others and positivity. And that's the choice that I make, and I'm being responsible for my energy in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it is important for us to fill it back up with something, and we do get to choose. And so putting the positive back into it. And a lot of people think, well, I don't have anything to be grateful for. My life is absolute shit. And maybe it is. I mean, maybe there is a lot of that in your life right now, but, or I should say, and there's also a lot of good, like you're breathing on your own. You can get out of bed physically on your own. Most of us have running water in our homes, and the majority of us have hot running water in our homes. All of these things that we take for granted. We do have a home, most of us,
We have a
So, I
home.
mean, all of these things that we take for granted every day and we think our lives are so terrible. Maybe there is some of that. I'm not saying there's not. I'm not diminishing that at all. There's a lot of pain in this world, but there's so much good too. And where focus goes, energy flows. So if we start noticing those things and being grateful for those things and saying it, right?
Yes,
Saying it,
naming
writing it
it.
down, acknowledging it, naming it. Yes, more of that is going to come in. And I think when we're in those
So true.
places that are where we're so frustrated and feeling so lost, it makes it harder to see it, but it's still there, and we can expand it
It's so
with some intention.
true. So wise what you're saying. And it's true, like what we put out is what we attract back. And I always have people tell me like, you're so lucky. Like people in my family always say like, you must have a horseshoe up your ass, you're so lucky. And I'm like, it's not that I'm lucky, it's that I believe in myself. It's that I know deep down in my soul that no matter what circumstance I'm put in this life, I'll be okay. I'll
Yeah,
be more than okay. I'll make it out alive. I'll make it out to tell my story. And I was born to tell my story. And I was born to share with others. I was born to have a voice. I know that I will survive. I know that I will make it through this. I will make this a success story. I will make this a story to tell for others to understand, for others to relate to, for others to believe in themselves.
yeah,
And I think that it's so funny how, yeah, people say things like, "Oh, how do you always have things work out for you?" I'm like, because I know they will and I believe they will, and that's the
yes,
energy I choose to put out.
yeah.
Like some
It's the
things I
deal maker right there. I mean, that is it. That's what it is. You create it. You create your own luck, and if like I have this thing that I say when people are being like gloom and doom, I'm like, oh my God, write a better story. Holy crap. Like you have all this power, write a better story. I mean, like, how is the rest of your day going to go? Are you convinced that it's going to be a crap day and everything that can go wrong will go wrong? I promise you that if that's your attitude, so many things are going to go wrong. So many
I'm gonna
things.
steal that. Write a new story, especially because
Yes.
I'm a writer. I'm so stealing that. Thank you for that nugget of wisdom. That's so good. Get a new storyline.
That's right. That's right. We have the power. And if we create, like I distinctly remember this one time when I was working at a cashier as a cashier. And I don't know, I dropped something or something happened. And this person on the other side of my counter goes, oh, you're having one of those days. And I looked at them and I go, no, I'm having one of those moments. Like this is only a moment and this isn't my entire day. My entire day is not going to go like this. And I just decided in that moment that that's not the way my whole day was going to go. And guess what? I had a beautiful rest of my day. So that was my story for the rest of my day, was that it was going to be a beautiful day, and it was. So we do have a lot more power than what we give ourselves credit for sometimes.
Absolutely. We're such powerful beings. Like everybody has their own energy and everybody has the power to choose what they want to do with it and where they want to put that energy. And it's crazy how some people in this world, like they walk through life with blinders on, like they're in a tunnel. And we were talking about this the other day, and that like there's a whole world going on around us, and there's such a bigger picture, and there's such a higher form of life and self and energy, but you have to choose to acknowledge it. You have to choose and you have to work at it.
Mhm.
And just because you make the choice to acknowledge that energy, like, yeah, it's a big world and there's lots of energy and I can be positive, blah. Wow, am I ever inspired? Like, no, you have to believe in it, and you have to live it, you have to breathe it, you have to, there's a reason manifesting works in a certain way. You have to believe it. You have to truly be connected. You can't just say like, I'm going to be a millionaire. Cute, love that. But like, how? Why should you be a millionaire?
Yeah,
When?
right,
Why, what makes sense about that? Why do you want to be a millionaire? Is it
right.
because you're going to use your money to help people? Is it because you just want status and you want to look cool on Instagram? Is it like, why do you want this? Why are you worthy of this? And not that you have to explain it to anyone else, but I think you need to explain it to yourself. And I think you owe
Right.
it to yourself to explain your goals to yourself and say, I want this because I am worthy, because I am deserving, because like I have a vision board and I love a good vision board. Like you sit me down with some kombucha and some magazines. Oh, yes, get me a glue stick and some scissors. I love a good vision board session. But part of the vision board isn't just cutting out pictures in magazines and pasting them on a picture. It's about seeing it and believing it. And every day
Yes.
I'm reminded, oh, that's my vision. Oh, that's where I'm going. And I'm a visual learner, so it helps. But,
Yeah.
sometimes just telling ourselves, like, I'm going to be a success and I'm going to do big things in this world, that's great. But sometimes you got to put it on paper. Sometimes you have
Mhm.
to make the image. Sometimes you have to have a meditation and imagine what that would be like. How would you feel mentally, emotionally, physically? What would you exude? What would that change in your life? Who would you impact? How would that impact yourself? What would you be responsible for? Like there's so much to think about that goes into manifesting our dreams and speaking them into reality. And it's an art and it's a practice and it takes
Yeah.
practice too.
Yes, it does take practice. You're absolutely 100% right about that. And I'm in the process, and I know you are too, of creating my dreams and bringing them into the physical reality. And it is, and you catch yourself sometimes saying things or doing things that aren't in alignment with that, and you have to bring yourselves back to center, and it's a huge awareness. It's a huge exercise in awareness. It really is, because you have to be mindful of the way you speak. I mean,
Mm.
I had a friend of mine, I said something to her the other day, and she's like, "Oh, my subconscious knows I'm joking." And I'm like, "No,
Nope.
actually, that's not true." Like, we have to be very mindful. So I find myself, as an example, just rephrasing things. I'll hear them coming out of my mouth, and I'll just instantaneously change how I'm saying it so that it's more positive and it holds more power, because it is very important, the things that we say, and writing it down is huge. But if you're not a visual person, because not everyone is, because I have another friend, and her husband said recently, well, I'm not able to visualize things. I go, then you don't have to.
Yeah.
How would you feel? Think about that. Like, focus on the feeling of it, because that is, visual is great, and it does help a lot of us, because I'm very visual as well. So I love it. Like, I visualize things in my mind all the time. But having that emotional attachment to it, emotionalizing and realizing how we're going to feel when we're able to see those things in our reality and do those things is really a great way for people who aren't as visual.
Absolutely. There's so many ways to manifest and to believe. And even like I've recorded myself saying affirmations and like recorded an audio diary that I would listen to before bed and speaking myself into existence of who I want to be and where I want to go and saying like I am this and this is my life. And I used to have a journal and I used to call it my perfect beautiful life. And I designed everything from the way that my home would smell to the friends that I would have, to what their careers would be, to what our interests would be, the things we would say to each other. Like I got so detailed in this journal. I still have it and I add to it all the time. And I recorded myself reading my journal and I would listen to it before I went to bed. And it was such a powerful exercise because I know that I'm deserving of my perfect, beautiful life. I know that I'm deserving of the relationship with myself and my friends and my loved ones. I'm deserving of an amazing career that I love, where I can inspire others and be connected to others through storytelling and written word. I know that I'm worthy of all of that. And it's manifesting is such a beautiful gift. And if a vision board doesn't work for you, there's so many other ways. Like as you said, you can feel it, you can record yourself, you can, there's get creative with it.
Yeah. I love that you said, like, I'm going to make myself a sign to put up in my home that says, speak yourself into existence. I love that so much. Thank you for saying that. I just think that's amazing. I would love for you to tell people where it is you see yourself going with this. I know you mentioned storytelling and sharing your story with everyone. So, where do you see yourself going with this? I would love for you to share with people because maybe there's someone out there listening that can help you get to this place.
Yeah, absolutely. Please. Well, I'm writing a book right now, and it's called Behind the Rose-Colored Glasses by Amber Julina, and it will be a New York Times bestselling. And it's about my life in Australia and my trials and tribulations and what I went through, my journey through mental health, addiction, eating disorders, fame, and the tumultuous ride that it was. And the book is really about telling my story, a story that I never got to tell because I always had to put on a facade of like, I did this show and it was a once in a lifetime opportunity and an experience I'll never forget. Thank you so much for asking. And I had to do it with a big fake smile on my face and do the PR bullshit. And this is my real story. This is what was really going on behind the scenes, behind the smiles, behind the rose petals, behind the gowns, behind the everything. This is the real deal. And this is me raw, unedited, unscripted. This is the real me. This is the real reality TV. This is, oh, for reference, I was on The Bachelor Australia. That's the rose petals and the everything references and the gowns. And it was actually quite a dark journey. Everyone thought that it was going to be this fairy tale experience of mansions and fairy lights and rose petals and super yachts and blah blah blah. Well, it wasn't. I felt like I was trapped in $1 million prison where my mental and emotional health was put in danger by producers for 2 months straight, where I was on 24/7 lockdown without access to the outside world, with no phone, no TV, no internet, no nothing, 24/7 security lockdown. And my mental health started to deteriorate, and I actually developed depression while we were filming. And rather than producers helping me, they exploited me.
Mhm.
And they put me in scenarios that made me explode. They put me in scenarios that provoked my mental and emotional trauma and my mental and emotional health. And so then when the show aired, it was like, who is this girl? Why is she such a psycho? Why is she
Right.
this? Why is she that? And the way that my character was portrayed, I was portrayed as the villain, and I was edited in such a horrible fashion. And then people started to believe that that's who I was, and I started to believe that's who I was. And my existence became very dark. So this book is about that. And it's also about the journey of self-love and self-healing that I've been on and how I've been able to make it out of that. And it's really a trial and tribulation and a journey, and it follows the hero's journey. And I want to show people that You are a hero. You
Yeah.
can make your own journey and you can make it out alive of whatever journey you're faced. So, what's next for me is writing my book and focusing on that. So, if there's anyone out there who wants to be along for that journey, I would love the assistance. It's my first book. So, I feel like I can use all the inspiration and creative advice that I can get. So, anyone listening would love that. You can hit me up on Instagram at amber.gelina. That's amber.gelinas, or you can find me at The Right Choice, www.therightchoice.ca, and right is spelled Write.
Awesome. And I will put all these links in the description box below the video. So we'll have easy access to those for anyone interested in getting in contact with you. Anything else besides the book?
Right now, I'm focused on my copywriting. So I own the rightchoice.ca, and we are a copywriting service. I say we, I am a copywriting service. And I love what I do. I love working with brands. I love taking businesses and transforming them into brands. I love marketing. I love advertising through written word. I love creating content. And that's my focus for this year, is focusing on my business, focusing on my own brand, and helping other people focus on their brands.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about speaking? Are you going to be doing any speaking engagements?
Yeah, so I potentially, it's not a for sure yes, but I have an opportunity in New York City to be speaking at a mental health awareness event. It's not confirmed, but if you follow me on social media, I will keep you updated as best I can and as much as I'm allowed to on that. And other than that, I'm just putting my word out there, connecting with like-minded podcast hosts and sharing my story, learning about other people's, and getting myself out there.
Yeah. So, and you're open to other speaking engagements, though, correct? So, if anyone would like to have you come share your story, you would be willing to do that?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
would love to share my story. I would love to share my story, whether it's on your podcast, in person, online, or in life. I'm happy to share my story with anyone who will listen. And I think it's an important story to tell. And I think that there's a lot of people who could benefit from learning about self-care, mental health, going through substance use, recovering from trauma, recovering from abuse, making it out the other side, and making it out the other side into a version that you love.
Absolutely. That's amazing. So if y'all are listening out there and you would love to have Amber do some copywriting for you, or you can help her with her book in any way, or would like to have her come speak for you, then please give her a shout. I'm going to put her links in the description box below the video. So Amber, I'm so grateful to you for coming and sharing your story today and teaching us how everything ties all together into spirituality. You know, it's all part of the same journey. It truly is. So thank you for that. I appreciate you. And
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you too. And thank you to all the listeners. I appreciate each and every one of you.
yes, thank you so much. And as always, thank you for listening to this episode. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. We do have the Spiritually Speaking Facebook group, which I always link in the show notes as well. So thank you so much. And as always, I love you all. We'll see you on the next one.